Exactly.
So, you know, that's really, there's no such thing in a monetary system as a free country. It doesn't exist. So you're a slave to a corporate structure, basically, very simply put. And essentially, so Jacques Fresco, he presented new ideas to me that I had never thought about, and it took a long time for me to absorb, like I think a lot of people, when they first hear about these ideas, it takes a very long time for them to realize, because they've been so indoctrinated into this sort of, you know, freedom-oriented capitalist connotation, or free market connotation, where they think that they associate freedom with the fact that they go and they can buy whatever they want. They can buy from, you know, they can choose from 75 types of cereal in a grocery store. But yet there's only 2 political parties in their country.
Exactly.
So they don't, there's a massive disconnect.
That's crazy, isn't
and they have
it?
no idea that democracy is a complete illusion, because in a true democracy, well, first of all, whatever a true democracy may be is actually to leave to question. But in our system, money rules everything. And all you have to do is look at any campaign across the world, especially in the Western world, to see that money and the financial support coming from financial backers, the financial industry itself, such as in America, we have Barack Obama now, who is heavily backed by Wall Street. He completely destroyed McCain and his financial backing. His funding is heavily financial and corporate. They put people in power that support the industry at large. The United States, for example, is just a large corporation.
Of course it is.
And just like the UK or anything
And if
else.
people can't say that, then they really need to open their eyes.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that people don't really think about much, is the real problem of money itself. And this is what Jacques Fresco thought about. And in his final conclusions that I've found, it made perfect sense to me. It's that you can't have balance or equality or a world without poverty or a world without war or any of these sort of utopian Christian ideals that people think about in a very traditional sense. Like, why can't we have people living, you know, this and that in a balanced, classless, you know, non-hierarchical, you know, non-elitist type of environment? Why is it the elite always come to fruition? And to really figure it out, you didn't recognize that the biggest tool, the biggest catalyst of this is the monetary system, because it perpetuates stratification. It perpetuates greed. It perpetuates poverty. It perpetuates scarcity. Very quickly, you know, one of the many things I learned about the Venus Project, very quickly, is that the monetary system creates scarcity because scarcity is rewarded. So you can never have a world of abundance. You can never have a world where everyone's fed, because in such an environment, no one can make money off of it inherently. So scarcity and deprivation is built into the system. Corruption is built into the system. So what he began to think about, and what I'm advocating in the new film, which I'm very much in support of, and I have my own trains of thought too. It's not just the Venus Project, and in fact, it isn't just Jacques Fresco. It's this underlying ideology that you have to start designing society to benefit humanity as a whole. And scarily enough, to many people in this fearful New World Order kind of environment of people that think this way, you need a certain degree of technological world unification in order to do so. And when I say this, a lot of people say, whoa, that's like one world government. And if people think about that,
that's been on a lot of people's lips,
yes, it
actually.
has.
They're
But they
very scared about how it could go down that path.
Sure, but there's an inherent fallacy to these notions. You need world unification basically because the highest optimization of utilizing the planet would be an organization worldwide. That's why I say technological and intellectual unification. It's not that you break down all the borders and you have, you know, no countries or anything like that. That's not at all. These, first of all, countries are inherently primitive. You know, these are the monetary system and the need for survival is what creates countries, essentially. Countries would exist in the future, hopefully, as a form of organization. It wouldn't be nationalism.
I was going to say that. Who's going to run the show? Who's going to be in charge? We get rid of money, which they're trying to do anyway. They're trying to rule the paper stuff out.
Well, yes, but they're going to have it digitally. They want to have a digital currency.
That does affect a lot of economies if paper goes.
Well, yes. Well, they can't control. The mechanism of paper is traceable, and you know they used to have the pound used to be supported by gold, and same with the dollar, and now that's been gone. They just have these little things, and they say it's fiat, basically. At least in the States, they do. And eventually, they're going to move forward and eradicate the currency. Eventually, you get to a point where there's no way to trace anything. There's no way to look at the numbers. There's no way to look at the math. Like, I can look at the math, more or less, of the Federal Reserve and see how corrupt in the pyramid scheme that it is. You can look at the inflation. You can look at the depreciation of the dollar. You can look at all the attributes, more or less, still. And once the financial elite get to a point where they have the technology to do it, they'll make it a complete illusion, which is what it is anyway. Money isn't real. The only thing that's real are resources, and that's what Jacques Fresco recognized. So you have to move past this and realize that resources are really what's important. And until we utilize the resources and utilize our intellectual creativity, which is what creates technology, which is really what everything is in regard to what helps us on a very utility-based level. Everything is technology, from this chair to this. It's just, that is really...
Well, we're just talking about the technology, if I can just jump in there.
Sure.
And I'm fascinated about how do we get rid of the oil and the pollution, and if you can just talk about solar energy and the geothermal
energy.
That's the one.
There's so many different forms of energy out there. To think that we are restricted to oil or anything is only because of the corporate structure.
Yes.
So there's no sustainability in this type of system, because there's a need for self-preservation, which inherently is corrupt, because systems that have evolution continues in an emergent cycle, and we discover certain things, and we're always going to discover something better. But what happens in a monetary system is, because money's made off of one institution, they don't want to change. And until they can get the leverage to maneuver themselves, like such as they want to bring in hydrogen into America. Why? Because they can use the same infrastructure as gasoline, as opposed to, say, battery technology, which at this day and age could be unbelievable if they actually maximize the potential of it. Think about how small microchips and everything is. There's no reason that you can't have a battery in a car that could run for eventually 1,000 miles, on one charge. It's just insane to think that we can't do that, because we certainly can. So it's paralyzing, is what the system is. We're paralyzed.
And parasitic.
Yeah, parasitic inherently, but as far as the actual progress, we're paralyzed. So technological progress is restricted because of the monetary system, the need for self-preservation.
But how do we make this jump from
you have to
this Venus project, like the utopia?
Yes, that's the most difficult question, because it's going to take a shift in consciousness. People have to realize what's important. And unfortunately, we have so many dichotomous religions and so many dichotomous worldviews that I'm not ignorant and naive to the difficulty of it, but this is the path. This is what has to happen. You have to have people realize how they're interconnected symbiotically, and then simultaneously realize that everything is emergent and changing. And those are two things that people don't recognize. The arrogance of religion is such where people believe they're separate, they believe they're special, they think that they're different for some reason than a bug or something. And the reality is there's no difference whatsoever. But this is what they've been taught, and this is our primitiveness that perpetuates. It keeps us divided, keeps us separated from nature. Because once you step back and realize how we're connected to nature, and again, first of all, we're connected to nature to the effect that everything we do has a cause and effect, and with each other and everything else, and with the environment. Corporate pollution is unbelievable. They don't care about the environment. No one's realizing this. So when we realize that, you realize that in order to live in harmony with nature, you have to actually listen to nature and understand its processes, its natural laws, in a line. Like, there's no reason we should do anything that's not sustainable. 75% of most production is waste. So to make anything, it's just, there's so much waste involved. Not to mention, for example, a computer is made out of materials that are only durable to the extent that the market system will allow for them to maintain market share. So the highest form of resources aren't utilized to make things like really long and efficient, because inherently they have to keep market share. So things get more and more cheap.
Everything's meant today to break down.
Planned obsolescence.
Exactly. When I was a child, you would have a hairdryer, for example, and it would just last for ages. And now everything conks out, for want of a better word.
Yes.
In a year or two, it just breaks down. Yes. It's not built to last.
So it's unsustainable.
Unsustainable.
And that's very hideous for us, because it has so many ramifications, from the landfills to the pollution. So we're totally out of line with nature. So the first thing that has to happen, I think, is that people need to realize that all operations have to be environmentally aware, period. And if you're in a position that it's not, then you're doing something wrong. And the system obviously is wrong when you step back far enough, because you see that the system doesn't reward any of that. So I think when that awareness comes forward, for example,